Marvelous Land of Oz Part 3. Where we left off, the Scarecrow has been able to retake the Emerald City and kick out the girls' army of revolt led by General Ginger. However, what they soon realize is that they haven't really taken back the Emerald City because the palace is essentially under siege. It is being surrounded by this army and they're not budging. So the whole crew, the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, Tip, the Sawhorse, Jack Pumpkinhead, and the Wogglebug, realize that they have to escape. Now, Tip has one more dose left of the magic powder that brought Jack Pumpkinhead and the Sawhorse to life. So what they decide to do is create a bizarre amalgamation of things that can hopefully fly, and they are going to bring it to life. So each of them brings something different to the roof to create this flying creature. They bring a taxidermied head of a gump, which is kind of like an Aussie and an elk that was hanging on the wall. They bring 2 sofas, lots of clothesline and a rope. They bring a broomstick to act as a tail, and then 4 big palm tree leaves to act as wings. Now, apparently, I didn't even know that there were palm trees in the Emerald City. Apparently there are. And apparently it is super illegal to take the branches off of it, but I don't know, they do it anyway. This is them with all of their stuff. So they put it all together and bring it to life, and the thing, also referred to as the gump because the head looks like this. Tip doesn't have enough of the powder left to bring the legs to life, so it's kind of just the head, the body, and the wings, and this poor creature can fly but not walk. Throughout the rest of this book, the gump, oddly enough, shows that it has more common sense than most of the rest of these characters. It also seems pretty miserable and cynical and not happy to be brought to life at all. But they end up flying away from the Emerald City with the intention of going to see Glinda in Quadling Country. However, they accidentally go too far and end up in the Jackdaw's nest. I guess these are giant birds, and they wind up in the nest. The gump has 2 of its wings broken off, and they are trapped there and being attacked by these giant birds. Tip and Jack Pumpkinhead decide to hide underneath the sofas so that they won't get attacked. Jack Pumpkinhead is very concerned throughout this whole book about his head getting cracked or spoiling. The Tin Woodman tries to fight off all the birds. They end up taking all of the Scarecrow's straw out and scattering it across the valley. And then they ultimately get scared off by the gump flapping its 2 remaining palm leaf wings, and they get really freaked out by that and go away. So they're fairly uninjured, except that the Scarecrow has no straw, but they realize that this giant jackdaw nest is pretty much made of riches. The bottom is just coated with all kinds of money, all kinds of different dollar bills, and there's also lots of jewelry around that the jackdaws have taken from a nearby village. Now, I think the assumption here, so they have gone past Quadling Country, across the desert, separating Oz from the outside world, and now it says that they've started to see houses that have slanted roofs instead of round houses with dome roofs like there are all throughout Oz. So that makes me think that they have made it to America, but they don't interact with anyone from America. They essentially just stuff the Scarecrow back up with dollar bills, and they take their pick of all the jewelry and then they leave. To me, this could represent a couple things. A, the Scarecrow is now the ruler of the Emerald City, and he has at this point lost his substance and stuffed himself back up with money. But also, I feel like this kind of represents American imperialism. Like I've mentioned in a previous video, after the Spanish-American War, the US came into a few new territories like Guam and Puerto Rico, and this sort of feels like they came into a place that was not theirs. They drove the residents, the jackdaws, away, and then they took all of their resources. But this crew, and probably L. Frank Baum as well, seem to think that these items are more rightfully theirs than the jackdaws because the jackdaws presumably stole them from the residents in the slanted houses, I guess, in America. So they don't really seem to have any remorse about taking any of this stuff, and they don't stop to consider how that could potentially affect the jackdaws at all. And in my opinion, this reflects L. Frank Baum's opinions about American imperialism, how he believes white people have the right to all of the land in the US, and that makes me think that he probably would have had the same opinion about U.S. territories. They find a false bottom in the box that had all of the magic powder of life, and there are some wishing pills in there. So the instructions say that you need to take a pill, count by twos up to 17, which doesn't seem like it can be done, and then you can make a wish. But they end up being able to get around that rule by starting at 1/2, doubling that to get to 1, and then counting by twos from there, which seems a little fishy, but it works. At first, Tip tries to take the pill, and it causes him an immense amount of pain, and he ends up wishing that he never took the pill at all, which works. So it gets sent back into the box. And then the Wogglebug ends up taking it because, you know, everything else, all the other creatures that are here, don't really have guts. They don't really have the ability to swallow something. So it really comes down to Tip and the Wogglebug. So the Wogglebug is able to make a wish that the Gump's wings can be repaired, and then they are able to find Glinda in Quadling Country. They end up accidentally forgetting the other 2 wishing pills in the Jackdaw's nest after they've taken all of these riches, money, jewelry, all of that. And it turns out that they don't need the other wishing pills, but I honestly wonder if that is reflective of all of these territories receiving empty promises, right? All of these territories sort of receiving thoughts and prayers, best wishes from the US, but not a lot of substantial support. However, again, I don't know that that really reflects L. Frank Baum's views on imperialism and colonization, so I don't know. They go to Glinda and they're like, please, we need help taking the Emerald City back. And she's like, well, the thing is, Scarecrow, you are not the rightful ruler of the Emerald City, and neither is General Ginger, because you got the throne from the wizard who took it from Pastoria, and Pastoria had a daughter named Ozma. But the thing is, Ozma went missing when she was a baby, and so Glinda is now trying to figure out where Ozma is. Now, Glinda goes through a whole record of all of the wizard's actions that her spies were able to glean during his reign, and found out that he secretly visited Mombi the witch 3 times. So Glinda gets her pristinely uniformed, disciplined, well-trained girl boss army to go stand outside of the Emerald City and demand that Mombi become their prison. At first, Mombi essentially does a body swap with that little girl Jellia Jam and sends her out to talk to Glinda, but Glinda sees right through that, changes her back into herself. That doesn't work. General Ginger does not want to lose her throne as Queen of the Emerald City, so she says, okay, if you can come into the Emerald City and find Mombi before sundown, then you can have her. If not, you have to leave me alone forever. For some reason, Glinda agrees to that, but they come in and they're not able to find Mombi because she has turned herself into a rose. However, the Tin Woodman, with his, gentle heart, sees a giant rose just as they're about to leave and plucks it and puts it in his lapel. So it turns out they're able to capture Mombi after all. Now, Glinda threatens her with death and says, you have to tell us what happened to Ozma, otherwise I will kill you. And she's like, well, what's going to happen to me if I tell the truth? And she says, well, you'll get to live, but I'm going to make you take a potion that will make you forget all of your powers. So she ends up confessing that our friend Tip is actually Princess Ozma, and she turned her into a boy. And so they all insist that Tip has to be turned back into Ozma to be able to become Queen of the Emerald City, retake the throne, all of that. Tip is not thrilled about this and says that he wants to remain a boy, but ultimately relents and is turned back into Ozma. One thing I find interesting about this is that L. Frank Baum does continue to refer to Tip using that name and he/him pronouns up until the moment that Tip is turned back into Ozma, at which point he switches to calling her Ozma and using she/her. Just makes you think, man, it's really not so hard, is it? Anyway, trans icon Ozma takes the throne of Oz, seems to be a very good queen, has Wogglebug on as an advisor, and the Scarecrow decides to go back with the Tin Woodman to the land of the Winkies, his empire, not kingdom as he calls it. And obviously Mombi is not a witch anymore, but Ozma does decide to allow Mombi to live in the Emerald City and support her in her old age, which is very forgiving. Anyway, here's Ozma on the throne at the end, and I will see you all for book 3.